out here trying to catch whether or not this man is using you for just some social experiment, I think it's really important that you stop and realize that when you boil dating down to its essence, it's just experimentation. Dating is just a social experiment. You are out and about mixing and mingling, experimenting with people to test for compatibility for a relationship. And, you know, if you are dating outside of your race for the very first time to broaden your horizons, to see if the grass is greener on the other side, then you are experimenting just as much with him as he could be with you. So in your vetting process, I say it in quotes because I don't really like that word. Like, there's something about vetting that just, I don't know, I don't like its like connotation, and maybe I'm giving it a connotation that it doesn't even have, but it just sounds so like depersonalized to me, and I think that's just kind of what I don't enjoy about it. But anywho, if you are in the vetting stages and you're thinking about questions to ask that may or may not be helpful in weeding out certain people, one thing as a Black woman that's not really gonna be that helpful despite what it seems, despite how it seems, is asking the question whether or not he has ever been in a relationship with a Black woman before. And the reason that it's not helpful is because it doesn't really tell you anything about his views on Black women or about his views on Black people in general. Like, it doesn't actually tell you anything about that. Like, realistically, most people date and marry within their race, and most of us fall under the category of most people. And, you know, have you ever been in an interracial relationship before? Have you ever dated outside of your race before? If you haven't, like, do you think that means that you were unsuitable or unqualified, or should you not try? Should you not experiment? You know what I'm saying? So it's not the most helpful question, and it's also not helpful because it doesn't really tell you anything about his thoughts on women in general. And that is what is key to understand, because if you enter into a relationship with this person, eventually your race and you two having different skin tones, like, that's not going to be so new and novel and, like, you know, alluring forever. Like, that's gonna wear off. That, like, newness factor is gonna wear off. And when that wears off, he is going to treat you however he has been conditioned to treat and to view women in general. Now, what is a helpful question to ask, and what will give you a ton of insight on the quality and the caliber of this man, is asking, who is the most important woman in your life? And here is the most important part of that question. Here is the biggest caveat, is asking why. Who is the most important person, or not important person, but who is the most important woman in your life, and why? The why is critical. The why is critical. So when I first moved to Washington State and I had gone on a couple of dates with this one guy, I asked him this question. And, you know, obviously it's a big question, and I don't think you necessarily have to ask it in the same exact way that I asked it, but maybe some iteration. And so when I asked him this question, I paid very close attention to what he said. He said his mother, which, you know, that's to be expected, right? And that can be a really precious, like a really awe-inducing answer. But here's the clause to that. He said his mother because throughout his life, she always took care of him, always took care of his father, always took care of his siblings. She always took care of the house. She always took care of all of their events, all of their needs, just always provided for them. And she always put the family before everything, including herself. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that answer. And God knows I'm not trying to be critical of this individual or his mother. That is not my intention here. But hear me out. When I asked this exact same question, who's the most important woman in your life and why? When I asked this question to my current partner, to my boyfriend, this is what he said. And just, you know, pay attention to the difference in these responses. So when I asked him this question, he said his grandmother. And he said his grandmother because she was such an influential person in his entire family's life. You know, she immigrated from Croatia. She was super hardworking. She was really badass, as he called her, and she took care of the home, but she was also incredibly intelligent. She was able to find herself like a quality education at a time and in an area where that wasn't really easy for women. She was always encouraging education and reading and just being curious, as he said, and encouraging curiosity. And she was also really strong. Like, she was able to chop down trees and do like other woodworking types of projects. And do you see the difference? Like, the difference, do you see it? In the former, it's really just about what this individual did for him, and that's pretty much it. It's just like a one-way relationship. But in the second, it's really about the person. It's about who she was. And yes, they benefited because of who she was, but it was about who she was. Like, the former, there's really nothing about her personality or just her person in general. And in the second, like, it's distinctive qualities about her as a person. And this is so important to me, that especially as a Black woman, you pay attention to this, because Black women, we have been conditioned to be workhorses. Like, we have been conditioned to be workhorses for ourselves. Well, not necessarily for ourselves, but definitely for our friends and for our family especially. And it is so important to me that as a Black woman, that you, prioritize work for yourself, and if others benefit, that is fantastic. But also that you find a person, who is looking for his person and is not looking for his employee. You know what I'm saying? Like, who is looking for his person and who is taking the time to get to know you as a human being, as an individual, taking the time to know your wants, your needs, your goals, your dreams, your visions, etc. So another question that honestly is just not really that helpful is asking whether he has any like Black friends or like Black associates, Black acquaintances, like what level of Blackness is in his life. It's not really that helpful because, again, going back to my earlier point, like tends to stick with like. Most of us tend to have friend groups that reflect our race, our culture, etc. That's just how it is. I don't think it's optimal for anyone, but I think it's okay for everyone. And that's just what it is, right? And honestly, it doesn't matter anyways, because we all know of people that have that mindset of, you know, well, I can say or do whatever because I do have a Black friend, or like that just does really suspect type of stuff, you know, because they do have these friends. So it doesn't even really mean anything. It doesn't determine whether or not they are genuinely racist or bigoted, right? So that's not going to be the most helpful question. I have found, and please know, I say this in every video, but like I can't say it enough. Please know that I'm speaking from personal experience. You have to adjust, you have to acclimate to your circumstances and for your circumstances and for your situation. So this is just speaking to my personal experiences and what has and hasn't worked for me. But something that I always ask, instead of just, you know, do you have Black friends, is, do you think that racism and bigotry is still an issue in the United States? Do you think that it is still alive? Do you think it's still in existence? And I'm going to be honest with you here. I have had a few men say no to me, and it's never worked out with them. If they have just unequivocally said no, it's just never worked out. And the reason why it's never really worked out is because, A, if you can take a big question like that, that means, or not that means, but that involves people, places, and things that you can't see, because we can't see everything that's going on in all parts of the nation or in all parts of the world, right? Like, we really can only see what is in front of us. And so if you can take something big like that, that involves places, people, and things that you can't see, and just say, no, this isn't happening, that shows to me that you are probably a narrow-minded person. You lack a growth mindset, or you lack empathy, and you lack the ability to understand the nuances and complexities in this world. And in a lot of ways, when you're entering into an interracial relationship, there are going to be nuances and complexities within that relationship that will be different than in other types of relationships. So for me, if the person says no to that, that honestly tells me everything I need to know. And it doesn't even just tell me necessarily that they're racist. Like, that's not necessarily what it tells me, although it is possible, right? Sorry if you hear Goldie. She always likes to make an appearance during videos. But anywho, that doesn't necessarily tell me that this person is racist, but it does tell me that, you know, they probably live a very sheltered, isolated, insulated life. And I don't know. I don't know if that is someone that you want to enter into a relationship with, right? Because like life has so much complexity and nuance, and we have to be flexible and we have to be open to it. And it might be difficult for you if the person that you're with doesn't have that capacity for change, for growth, and for flexibility. Okay, last thing, last question that just doesn't really help you is just like trying to outright ask explicitly if this person is just, you know, trying to like get at some sort of kink or fetish or fantasy, because who's gonna just say yes to that? You know what I mean? Like, even if you are and you're consciously aware that you are, like, who's just gonna be like, yep, that's what I'm here for, to enact a fantasy. That is all I want from you. So that's not helpful. I mean, I applaud your bravery if you can just come out and ask that question directly, but whatever they say is probably not going to be that helpful. But let me tell you what will be helpful. What will be helpful is discernment and observation. So paying attention to how he talks about you, how he talks about Black women. Like, how does he describe Black women in the events and the occasions that he does? But like, how does he talk about you, and how does he see you and engage with you? And pay attention to like how he describes you, and pay attention to in the ways in which you present yourself, he reacts to that. Like, for instance, pay attention to how he reacts if you may change up your hairstyle, for instance. Like, let's say that you naturally wear your natural hair and then you switch up to some sort of protective style. Like, see how he reacts to that, because it could be one thing if, you know, he just prefers your natural hair, which is fantastic, right? Like, that's ideal. But like, how engaged and maybe even enraged is he when you make a choice to change, to not wear that style? Like, you know, my boyfriend loves when I wear my natural hair, and that's fantastic. But when I change my hairstyle, when I wear a protective style, he still loves it, and he still loves me because he loves me as a person, right? It's not just about the physical, and it's not just about me fitting into one box, one category, one look. So for that last part, pay attention, use your discernment, and just observe, observe, observe. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And until next time, stay safe, be well, and I'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.